Hello, fellow teachers. Today I would like to talk to you about the method and technique that is one of the best methods and techniques to actually teach your ESL students English in a proper and meaningful way. What is that method? What is that technique? I'm going to start with a personal story because I actually learned it the hard way. But I want to show you 3 things that I incorporate in my English lessons to ensure that my students excel at speaking English and they're pretty much very good at that language. Okay, so I want to start with a personal story because I feel like it actually shows how I saw language first and then how it has shifted because of my experiences. I grew up in the 90s. Back in Poland in the 90s, I mean, if you wanted to learn English, I mean, there were not many classes. English only started in school in 5th grade. And luckily, I had one of the best brothers who actually taught me English, taught himself English, everything he still is. And so he taught himself English, so then he taught me English. When I started 5th grade, I was already ahead of my peers, so I was like super proud. And when I finished high school, I scored the highest score on my final exam in English. And I was like, wow, I'm really cool. I'm really great. I'm really fantastic. I'm really amazing. Then I decided to take a gap year in England to polish my English. And to be honest, that was a harsh reality check. Why? Because I remember getting off the bus and I was greeted by Teresa, who was the one who invited me over. I was an au pair. And when she said something, she said a sentence on like, what? And then I had to ask her to repeat what she said and to repeat slowly. And then I registered what she said. And then my reply was one of the worst replies ever. It was so unnatural. It was so awkward. It was so weird. And I was like, what is happening? Come on, I scored the highest score and now I cannot speak. And then throughout the next few weeks, I naturally was listening. I was listening to a lot of things rather than speaking. It wasn't like any decision that I made. I was like, I'm not going to speak now. I'm going to just listen. It was just like something that happened very naturally. I remember I would be in different social situations, and then I would be a person who would just listen and would only speak when asked. I would listen to conversations between kids and Teresa. I would listen to the conversations Teresa had with her friends that would come over to her house. I would listen to conversations in the shops, at the cinema, wherever I went. And I would watch a lot of TV, or I would listen to a lot of radio. I would just soak everything in. And at the end of each day, I would also I had this A4 notebook that I would note down all the expressions and vocab that I learned in a given day. And I was amazed because it would be 20 or 30 different words and expressions. And they were all new. They were all ones that I didn't know before. And what struck me then was, how come I could remember all of it? How come? I mean, when the teacher gave me a vocab list that I had to memorize, it took me a while to remember all of those words. But here, I didn't memorize anything. I just remembered. And how was that even possible? It was possible because, and I reflect on this, in that moment of that realization, I was able to retain all of those words and expressions because I learned them in a meaningful way. I learned them through context. I learned them through experiencing different situations. So that helped my brain to connect ideas and situations, ideas and images, words and images. So I feel like that's one of the most important parts for our language knowledge. I also remember another very big moment after 3 months of being there, of being exposed to so much language, of listening to so many different conversations, and being in so many different conversations. After 3 months, I was watching Friends on TV, and then I was like, oh, I understand every single word. What is happening? And then I also realized, the conversations I'm holding with the family members and people outside, they were so natural. It was so cool. And I remember one of Teresa's friends who came over, he was very he was very shocked and surprised. I was like, oh wow, your English is so good. And I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it actually is. And that was such a realization. I was like, okay, so what was really missing? And that's when I realized that what was missing from my English at school was the meaningful communication. Meaningful communication. I didn't have a chance to listen to meaningful communications, and I didn't have the chance to engage in meaningful conversation because everything was so unnatural. And at school, we were only focusing on grammar, reading, and writing. That was the main focus. And when you think about it, I mean, it's kind of weird because like language is a communication tool. So first and foremost, I think we should first learn to speak the language and then learn the specifics of the language. That's how it should be done. I'm not saying that like, you should first just do this and then do that and just do it in order, but I feel like you have to keep communication priority. That's what I believe in. And that's how your kiddos will be able to learn English in a better and in a more meaningful way. What techniques do we actually use, methods, in my school and Executive English to ensure that our students actually excel at speaking English, like the first most important skill ever in learning the language. So the way we do it is number one, I ensure that like all of the teachers that teach here at Executive English are non Polish speakers because my school is based in Poland. I only hire natives. And the reason why I hire natives is because I know how little time we actually have in the lesson. And if a teacher would engage in using Polish and speaking Polish to students, it's lost time. I want my teachers to fill students' heads with English as much as possible. And if it's a native, it's only natural natives just going to use English. And students are going to be exposed to that English language, to patterns, sentences. So, and this is going to be such a contextual and meaningful exposure because they're going to be there with that teacher who's going to speak, who's going to talk and do things at the same time. And it's going to make a lot of sense. Maybe not straight away, and it requires time, but it's not just a native speaker that makes all the difference. So it's one component. So just like I said, native speaking is number one. It's really, really critical because he or she makes sure that there's English, not Polish or any other language. There's English. Number two, what's really, really important is like all of my teachers know that in order to learn a language, children need to be fed sentences, not words. To us is like one of the most important things. So even like we have little kiddos who come as their first class or 6 years old, they have no clue about English. We already introduce full sentences. It's not like we just show, oh, apple, strawberry. No, no, no. It's an apple. It's a red apple. This apple is red. Come on. At first, of course, it's not going to make a lot of sense to them, but it doesn't matter. Just like little babies who are born, doesn't make sense to them that you tell them, oh, we're going to change a nappy. Of course, it doesn't make sense to them at all. But at some point, they are going to connect whatever you're saying to whatever is happening. And they're going to make meaningful connections like, so that's what it is, right? So context makes all the difference. So the teacher's task is to speak full sentences, encourage students to use full sentences, even though it doesn't make any sense. It might not make sense in the very beginning, but speak the full sentences and just like use a lot of English. And so that's number two. And what I want to say also about number two is like when you have little kids who are 6 years old. So what we also encourage is that students not only listen to the sentences, but they repeat the sentence. Even though once again, it doesn't feel like it's natural. But it's direct method in a way that it's like, it's sentences that are repeated by students. The teacher says something, student repeats. Obviously, whatever student repeats is very meaningful because maybe students don't understand the full meaning of each and every single word, but they are able to say the sentence, so they are able to retrieve the pattern of a sentence. That's one. And they know that this sentence is connected somehow to whatever is happening in the lesson. And even if it is not making sense at that point, it's going to make sense in the 30th lesson, for example, because we're going to just like see, oh, that's what we actually discussed last time. Oh, and it's this. So it's just making meaningful connections to whatever is happening. So context is key. Context is very important. And number three, the thing that we use and we love to do is like, because we learn the best through experience. We learn the best when all our senses are engaged. That's pretty much how it is. That's why I was able, when I was back in England, I was able to learn all of these words so fast, because everything was learned through me experience all these situations. So we want our students to experience everything. And how do we experience things? By doing things. That's why here at Effective English, what we have is like workshops. So students do cooking, students do different arts, different crafts. And this actually enables us as teachers to engage students in a meaningful way while also talking English, while also using English, while also engaging in meaningful conversations. Obviously, very simple ones with starter students and more meaningful ones with older and more advanced students, but still it's a meaningful conversation. That's why we love that. So I would really strongly encourage you, if you run a school, or even if you're not a school, but you're just an ESL teacher, you're a freelancer, you work on your own, and you want to make the biggest impact on your students, I would really advise you to do these things. Of course, if you're a freelancer and you're not a native speaker, the first part that I talked about where, I hire natives, cannot be taken into consideration. But what I would like you to consider is like to tell yourself that you're not going to use your native tongue to speak to your students if you share the same native tongue, obviously. So that's like super, super important. Number 2, make sure that your students speak full sentences from lesson number 1. It doesn't matter if they already know a bit of language or they don't know any of it. They should already speak sentences, and make sure that students learn words through sentences, not words through words. Number 3, make sure that your lessons have something meaningful, have something that engages students' senses so that they remember everything better. So it's more contextual. Just like I said, crafts, arts, cooking, could be anything else they can think of that might engage students in a meaningful way. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you took something from this video, something valuable. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.